Put your hands together for Kevin Y. Brown.
Thank you. Good morning. How are you all? Doing great. Can I ask you a question? Did anybody notice anything about that activity that we just did? Yell it out, let me know. You followed me? Say it again. Get you moving, wake up, yes. One. Non-verbal. Who said that? What's your name? Jasmine, I have an award for you at the end of this, okay? You're welcome, Jazz. Yes, nonverbal. I literally just got 970 people from 24 different countries to stand up, clap, turn themselves around in a circle, stump your feet like a 5-year-old, all without saying a word. And to me, what that communicates, ladies and gentlemen, is that we all speak the same language. And that language is leadership. Because we understand that it's not what we say that matters, but what we do. It's very simple. What we do in life, it echoes in eternity. But it also echoes in the lives of those who we come across and who we influence. Now let me ask you, how many people in here have made an investment? How many people in here have stocks? By show of hands, how many people in here have stocks? How many people in here have a car, have a home, etc.? Okay, more hands went up, that's good. You can put your hands down. But everyone in here's hands should have went up because we're making investments on a day-to-day basis. We're making investments in our health. We're making investments in our mental state. We're also making investments in our families and the youth that we serve. In our families and the youth that we serve every single day. We're making those tiny, small investments. And what I want to share with you today is some investments that were really, really dire and really huge in my life. Is that all right if I share with you? Clap once if it's okay. Twice if you're ready to continue. 3 times just cuz. You guys are really good at this. You got some rhythm going, I must admit. Now for me, from a small city in California, United States, called Vallejo. And in Vallejo, there was this place that you had to be. It was for kids. You could go there, you could play basketball, you could play pool, or 8-ball as Donna Scott calls it. You could play 8-ball, you could play foosball. They had video games. And they also had study hall, which was where you had to go 1 hour after school every day Before you could go and play, you had to go to study hall. And we would go there to this Boys and Girls Club, but the only catch is that you had to behave. And so I went to this Boys and Girls Club, and when I was about 9 years old, they decided that I had had one too many warnings and that it was time for me to be kicked out. And so as I waited in the office near the door of the building for my foster care parents to come and pick me up, or for them to be called as well, a tall, brown-skinned, bald-headed man came in and said to me, "How you doing today?" My response, "I'm cool." And he says, "I hear that you're kind of smart," or "I hear that you're smart." I said, "Absolutely." He says, "Well, I want you to come on back to my office with me and come chat." And so I say, "All right, no problem." Now, I don't know this man, but he seemed nice, and I'd seen him around the Boys and Girls Club before. And so I go into this man's office, and he says, "Please, have a seat." Now, I've been watching some movies, and so I stood there and I said, "I'd rather stand." And he says, "Okay, no problem. I'll have a seat." And he proceeds, said, I have a question for you. If you can answer this question correctly, I am going to allow you to either win a basketball or a pair of trading cards or something, some reward out of my office. And his question is, what weighs more, a pound of bricks or a pound of feathers? Me, immediately, a pound of bricks. Can I have my reward? And then he comes from behind his desk and he says, "That was a good answer, but how does a pound of bricks weigh more than a pound of feathers if they're both a pound?" And then I step back and I'm like, "Oh, you got me. Let me answer another question. I want a reward. Let me answer another question." And so he gives me another question, and I answer this one correctly. Boom, I get a pair of trading cards. Now I have an award. And he says, "All right, so this is what I want to do with you. I want you to come back tomorrow, and I'll have some more questions for you." And so I'll go on about my day. I'm allowed to stay at the club. They didn't call my foster parents, thank goodness. And I come back the next day, except for this time, I'm running down to the Boys and Girls Club. This place is the Continentals of Omega's Boys and Girls Club, and that man's name is Mr. Fillmore Graham. So I run to the Boys and Girls Club, and I'm looking for Mr. Graham. Has anybody seen Mr. Graham? Anybody seen Mr. Graham? I want to talk to Mr. Graham. And he hadn't arrived yet. So I stood there waiting by his office, waiting for him to come in, because I wanted my reward. I knew I wasn't going to get any rewards at home and things like that, so I knew that I had to answer these questions correctly. And so Graham came in, and he spoke with me. He asked me a question. I got the question right. I won a basketball this time. Yes. And I tried to answer some more questions. He said, "No, not today." The next day comes. I'm running back to the Boys and Girls Club. Anybody seen Mr. Graham? Anybody seen Mr. Graham? I see Mr. Graham. I talk to him. And he says, "Hey, I heard that you were into a couple of different fights and things like that around the club." I said, "Yeah, but I can still answer the questions." And so he says, "It's important for your behavior to match your grades, to match how smart you are." And so he said, "This one time, I'm going to still play the game with you, but in the future, if you misbehave, you won't win a reward." And so I answered the question correctly, got my reward. A couple weeks later, I acted up again. And Mr. Graham, he did not reward me. And so I said to myself, why am I stopping myself from getting rewards by misbehaving? This doesn't really make any sense. And so slowly but surely, Mr. Graham started to change my behavior. And over the course of time, we became closer. And as I matured and became older, our relationship grew. But let's stop and talk about the small investments that he made. Number one, consistency. He was there on a day-to-day basis for me to run and find so that I could find something, some question to answer so that I could get something, either a prize or something to eat, anything like that. He also met me where I was. And then he also figured out another way to teach a young man how to behave. Because as I got older, he took the prizes out of the equation and told me that my reward was that I was able to answer the questions correctly, and that I was also able to behave and be as smart as I was, and that it would pay off for me in the long run. And again, as our relationship matured and as I became older, he also allowed himself to be human with me, sometimes speaking of the mistakes that he had made, so that our dialogue was then opened even further. So the dialogue and the relationship that I had with Mr. Graham also allowed me to be open to another investment that truly changed the course of my life. And that investment is one that you might get a kick out of. But I was a ninth grader in high school in this photography class, and it was me, Kevin Brown, and another kid named Robert Brown. No relation. Me and Robert Brown were both from the same neighborhood, the Country Club Crest. There's no country club, trust me. And so we would go into this photography class with our food, knowing good and well we shouldn't have food in there. We would also have our music playing. We'd be rapping songs and getting up, walking around, talking to the other students and things like that, totally doing what we weren't supposed to be doing. And then our teacher, Miss Carrie Wilson, she came over to us. She said, "Hey, guys, I noticed that you have a lot of energy. Which one of you guys can draw this piece in the middle of the class the best and use the shading and then explain it?" And of course, I said, "I can." And then Rob said that he could. He can't draw better than me. So we focused our energy there and then ended up focusing. And so then the next day came, and we came back in, same routine, rapping songs and moving around the class. And then she said, "Hey, guys, I noticed that you have a lot of energy. Why don't you go out and take pictures of the campus with our cameras, and we'll come back and develop the film. And then we can talk about what photography is." And so every time we talked to Miss Wilson, I felt empowered. I felt like I had something to contribute to the world. She always made us feel like we were on top of the world, that we weren't mischievous, but that we were someone who could bring something to the table and that we were important. And so it was at this point that we stopped coming into Miss Wilson's class the same way that we did, and we ended up just coming in and listening to her because we knew that she had our best interest at heart. And sadly, even though I never had another teacher who made me feel like Miss Wilson, I did have the opportunity to reconnect with her later on. So that semester ended, and as a freshman, we just keep on going. We're going through different classes and things like that. And we end up seeing Miss Wilson around campus. "Hi, Miss Wilson, how you doing?" Just kind of hi and bye type of deal. And it wasn't until my junior year that I really reconnected with her. And I reconnected with her because I had a disagreement with one of my teachers about my grades. And so we were taking a standardized test, and I look at what the grade that my teacher was going to give me, so I just throw all of my stuff on the ground, and I walk out of the class. I'm done with this. I walk out of the classroom. And so I'm walking around campus and things like that, and campus security, they come and pick us up. Except for it was campus security, Miss Wilson, who's now an administrator, and also the vice principal, Mr. McKee. And so they said, "Kevin Brown, you have to go back into class and take your test." I said, "Man, I'm not taking any tests." They said, "All right, well, you're going to have to come with us." No problem. So I'll go with them to their office, and I sit in Miss Wilson's office. And Miss Wilson, she has me sitting there, and she says, "Kevin Brown, I'm going to have to call your family if you don't want to go and take your test." I say, "I don't care. I've got foster parents. They don't care anything about me anyway, so what difference does it make?" She says, "Oh, you're in foster care?" I'm like, "Yeah, I've been in foster care since I was like 9 months, 1 year old." And so she says, "Wow, you're such a strong kid." I say, "Man, I'm just living life trying to survive. I don't know what's going to happen after this, but all I know is that life sucks." And so she says to me, she says, "Well, Kevin Brown, what do you want to do in life?" I say, "I want to get far, far away from here, as far as possible. I want to be a host for MTV, and I want to run my own clothing company." And she says, "Well, how are you going to do that?" I have no clue, but I just know that it's going to happen. And so Miss Wilson and I, we continue this dialogue about what matters to me. And lo and behold, she gets me to go back into the class. I take my test, and then I see her later on that week. 2 days later, I see Miss Wilson, and I'm walking with my friends. We're cool. And I say, hey, Miss Wilson, how you doing? And she stops me. She says, Kevin Brown, are you going to college? And I look back at her. I say, nah, not really. I'm a foster kid. College is for rich people. If I do go, maybe like a community college or something. And so I call myself turning to make that extra step to leave. And she immediately responds like a mother does. And she says, boy, you're going to college. And I look at her. First instinct is to say, no, I'm not. But then I remembered the dialogue and the conversations that Miss Wilson and I had. And she says, meet me at my office tomorrow morning at 7, before first period. And I respond, okay. And so the next day, I go into Miss Wilson's office, and I'm there with her. And the conversation starts up again. What do you want to do with your life? Have you ever been to a college campus? You know, if you want to go across the country, you could go to college, and that would take you over there. If you want to become a clothing designer, you need to study, because that's what the great people, you don't just all of a sudden become a clothing designer. You have to study the craft. You have to learn it. I'm like, Miss Wilson, I'm already driving things, drawing things. I have skills. She says, but you have to fine-tune them. And so she then began to continue that conversation, and she started to teach me how to fill out my college applications, my college scholarships, and how to fill out the financial aid for college. And so Miss Wilson, she began to do all of this on a day-to-day basis. And so it got to the point to where she would say, okay, Kevin, we need to complete this by the 15th, and I would complete it by the 5th, and then I would give it to her. And then Miss Wilson, she would give me something back, give me another assignment, and then I would complete that assignment, then give it to her quickly. And then I noticed that she was investing in me, and she was saying nothing but positive things to me. And so I would just come back, and that was like my safe haven. So I would even request from my teachers to let me do my work in Miss Wilson's office. So every single day I tried to go back and forth with Miss Wilson, because she was investing in me. And as a result of her investing in me, I learned to invest in myself. I learned to advocate for myself. I took out my gold teeth, pulled up my pants, walked into an office, and talked to adults like I had some sense. Yes, I had gold teeth, a lot of them. Once upon a time, I even had long hair. Don't judge me. But it was that contribution. It was that understanding that when the tone in her voice, when she said, you're going to college, that I understood that she was investing in me. So my question to you all is, what are you doing to invest in your youth, the youth that you serve? Yell something out. It's fine. You're listening. You're being there consistently. Yes. Hello. Loving. Consistent. Supporting. How about sharing a book? How about a hug? How about celebration? This is a celebration. For the youth that are here, this is a celebration for them. They don't usually get to come to a conference. When's the last time IFCO was in Australia? The conference? 99. How many years has that been? 17. So it's been a while, right? So we have our youth here. And so it's very important to continue that conversation, that celebration, because some youth are going to succeed because it's in their heart and they feel like there is no other option. You have other youth who are going to succeed because of the contribution and us meeting them here and then bringing them up here, which would be the same thing that Mr. Graham did for me, the same thing that Ms. Wilson did for me as well. And in order to start that dialogue, I actually created a gift for you. I created a white paper called The 10 Habits of Highly Successful Foster Care Children, and I want to give that to you. It'll be available at the registration desk later and available for download off of my website, kevinyBrown.com. That is for you to start that conversation, to break down those barriers and continue to push us, foster care youth, to succeed. It's very important. So with the 10 habits, I think that they will really, really open up the doors for you and open up the floodgates as well. So I want you to really understand this, that all of the investments, all of your investments matter. Because sometimes it might be as simple as you telling a 9-year-old boy a riddle. What weighs more, a pound of bricks or a pound of feathers? Or telling a youth that their energy can be used in a different way and changing the perspective on who they are and who that they feel they are. Because I want you to remember one thing, if you don't hear anything else from me here today, ladies and gentlemen. What you do in life does echo in eternity, but it also echoes in the lives of those who you come across and who you influence. And now, I want to do something even more heroic. I want to call all of the foster care youth in this room to the stage. That means come to the stage. All foster care youth, come to the stage. Let's give them a soul clap. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's very important to understand impact, to understand what it is that we're doing. See, our investments, they seem really small, but they're so big. But your legacy, it lives on, and it lives on through us. And I want to share something with you. See, I wrote this book, 10 Ways Anyone Can Graduate from College Debt-Free. And I've sold thousands of copies in the United States. But when you open this book up to page 3, it simply reads, "This book is dedicated to Mr. Fillmore Graham and Mrs. Carrie S. Wilson, 2 people who changed the course of my life by exposing me to the value of education and holding me to higher standards." This is the impact, because even after we're long and gone, what we do for other people will still be told and will still matter. So I'm Kevin Y. Brown, and it's been a pleasure speaking with you this morning. Thank you.